Hello and welcome to this week's Eating Your Game, our web series where we talk all things RPGs, focusing primarily on Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Now we've spent the last couple of weeks talking about dragons, getting ready for that Fizban's Treasury of Dragons to be released. Now that it's hit markets and everybody's been able to get their hands on a copy, hopefully you have yours. I thought we'd change the pace a little bit more and bring it back into some of the creative side of being a GM for D&D 5th edition. Today we're going to talk primarily about crafting encounters for your players. Let's dive in. Now, before we start the video, please make sure and go down and hit that subscribe button. If you don't mind the notifications, be sure to ding that bell. Leave a comment down below of content that you'd like to see us cover in this channel, and be sure to give us a thumbs up. Now, as a GM, we've kind of talked a little bit about it in the past, some of the world building and crafting and how to create adventures and scale up encounters and engage the encounters in your story arc to really connect with your story, with your primary villain, and with your characters. However, being a good GM really deserves a lot more discussion than we've given it here on the channel. So I wanted to start breaking down some of the encounter pieces and really going over how to craft an encounter for a player character party. Oftentimes, as we're writing out our overarching story arc and creating that backbone of our campaign or our adventure, we really think about the point A and point B. We think about along the way what types of encounters are we going to create and build. One thing that I really caution is not to create too much rigidity in your writing as you're preparing for your games, especially if you're creating prior to gathering your party up and beginning play. You can really fall into a trap of not being able to let each of your characters shine in the story. For instance, if one of your encounters really is about facing undead, possibly in a catacombs beneath a graveyard or below a temple, this really gives the opportunity to put in some locked doors or traps so your rogue has an opportunity to shine. Clerics or paladins being able to smite undead and turn undead really have an opportunity to shine. If you have kind of forward marching or tank characters like fighters or barbarians, they can go in hand-to-hand combat and really do some damage. And for distances, your ranged characters can really play a good hand in it. But rather than just looking at the CR tables and setting up a number of undead encounters that our party could face in this underground layer below a citadel or below a temple or below a graveyard, if we look at creating an adventure that allows our characters to utilize some of their skills and feats rather than just their combat tactics, that could really give the opportunity for us to allow our characters to shine a little bit more and allow the players an opportunity to really come at the story in creative ways, tying their characters more into the adventure. If we think about this catacomb-like area, think of a long corridor, possibly with a door on either side and at the far end of the corridor. Now we know the first time we talk about being underground in catacombs, 90% of our characters are going to shout out that they have dark vision. So don't even worry about things like that. Don't worry about torches. Don't start thinking about how they're going to overcome that as a challenge. Don't even look at minute things like that, because we can add in more challenges later on. If we think about the setting and the kind of layout of the map, there's a good opportunity to look at ways for our characters to shine going across this corridor, having two side possible encounters, and then a larger creature at the end. For this example, I'm going to use just a couple of just off the cuff ideas. So the long corridor, perhaps it's trapped, giving us an opportunity for our rogue characters to search and disarm traps. Now it's possible that they may not have any interest in searching for traps or disarming traps, and that's okay. But then they should have that consequence of triggering a trap. Now we don't want this to be a deadly piece. This isn't the final conflict. This is just a trap to slow them down and maybe alert others that there is some type of an intrusion. So by starting out the corridor with a trap, that really gives our opportunity for the rogue to shine. If we have, say, instead of a rogue in our party, because not all parties are always balanced, maybe there isn't a rogue, maybe they don't have any intentions whatsoever of disarming a trap. Maybe we've got super heavy arcane people in our character party. In that case, why not have it be a magic trap where an arcane check could be used? Or finally, some type of a religious trap where if a cleric were to do a religion check, they could discern that the carvings in the wall are talking about a trickster god, kind of keying them that there is something here that is not right and could be a trap. So looking at the initial thought of having a trap for rogues to overcome, we can switch and change it to allow for characters of different classes to interact with our story. We're still keeping a trap, we're still having that trapped hallway that could be triggered, could deal some damage or alert others that there are intruders. But you don't need to have a rogue if your party doesn't have a rogue to have that trap in there. Now, regardless of the makeup of your party, as the characters are moving down the corridor after either disarming the trap, whichever means it came into being, or having set off the trap. We talked about having two kind of side doorways, and that's an opportunity for us to have a little bit of fun, say, if the trap were triggered. At that point, there could be some type of a creature that is triggered to come and face down with the characters. Depending on the campaign, I mentioned a little bit about having some type of undead. And this could be something as simple as zombies and skeletons, both from either side, or one from either side. Or it could be further passages down that could go into a type of a labyrinth piece where a high intelligence is going to be needed to keep track of how they got in and how they're coming out. Of course, just throwing ideas out here, trying to think of challenges that the party may have. Let's say they're facing undead and they don't have any clerics or paladins, which is kind of odd, but I've seen it happen. So rather than using the zombies and skeletons, maybe we're going to throw something on them like giant rats or giant spiders or even giant snakes. It's an underground piece. There are different things we can use to let our characters shine. Again, this is something where as we're building our story and as we're creating encounters, a great GM is going to allow the story not to stall because of character choices and party makeup. They're going to utilize the tools at hand to create a story that's going to allow their characters, the characters in the campaign, to really shine. So a great GM, you really have to be aware of the character types that you're going to have, and then how you can build those encounters to allow those characters to shine. There's nothing worse than having a character or a few characters at the table and none of them are able to really do anything because they didn't pick the right class to suit your dungeon. It doesn't allow for much fun for the players, and when the players are not having fun, they're not going to be engaged. They're not going to really want to venture forward in a meaningful way, and it's not going to be fun for the GM. Jumping back to our encounter idea, after they have addressed the threats from the left and the right corridors, they're pressing forward, and they're getting to that final door at the end of the long corridor. This here could be some type of an opportunity to really allow someone else to have a moment to shine. Think of the catacomb doorway locked with some type of a arcane or puzzle lock. Now, I know puzzles can have a bad rap. It's a challenge. Sometimes your party members, the players themselves, don't want to take the time to go through a puzzle, but puzzles can actually be a lot of fun for characters themselves, not the players, but the characters. Let's say you decide to put some type of a puzzle trap on the door. Now, it's not locked. Your rogue or someone else already had a bit to shine to kind of disarm, locate and disarm a trap. The fighters or people with some type of a tracking piece had a moment to shine in the two corridors. If you have a character who was created who has a high intelligence, or in their background was some type of a arcanist or someone who would constantly utilize their brain. Think of it, someone who sat and was able to work on jigsaw puzzles or anything like that, where they're utilizing puzzle solving bits of background. That gives them an opportunity to now solve the puzzle and allow an entry into the room. Now, if your group likes to do puzzles, there are plenty of opportunity to find puzzles online and in previously published materials. But again, not all players want to sit and solve puzzles. Remember, the players are playing characters. Utilize skill checks, utilize rolls to see if the characters can solve the puzzle. An intelligence check, possibly an arcane check. There are different ways for them to solve the puzzle, keep things moving quickly, and for them to kind of have that moment to shine because their stat or an ability or a feat or a background really allowed them to do that. Now, after the door swings open, standing there before them is a fairly large room. It's in the shape of an octagon. There are coffins spread around. There are sarcophagus on a far dais. There is a screeching banshee up near the ceiling. But wait, maybe it's not that final villain that we want to have, a screaming banshee. It may make sense to our story because it was about the redemption or the destruction of this banshee. But again, if your characters don't have anything to combat that banshee, whether it's they don't have a paladin or a cleric, they have very limited amounts of magic weapons or spells, again, maybe we really need to rethink the story arc and the story that we are putting in front of them. We may have to mold this a little bit. What if instead of the screeching banshee, we change it a little bit so that the characters have more opportunity to utilize their skills, their feats, and their strengths to the party advantage? One thing to think about as you're creating these kind of bigger boss fights is rather than have everybody surround and try to get advantage by flanking one villain, that can be exciting and it can be fun, and the players generally have a good sense of accomplishment by defeating a villain in such a way. However, if you really want to challenge your players, look at ways that you can create multiple environmental challenges for different players in your group. For instance, let's say in this party we do have a cleric, we have a fighter, we have a wizard, and we have a rogue. We'll just go with 4 basic pieces. Now, this is by no means a definitive balanced party. This is just off the cuff creating. But if we have a lower ranking undead that the cleric can go after, in this case, instead of a banshee, maybe it's a wight. And there is a number of skeletons who are rising up out of the coffins before the dais. That gives our fighter something to accomplish while the cleric goes to address the wight. He'll try to turn it. And for the rogue, maybe it's something where throughout the entirety, the trap that was triggered or disarmed before now springs here. And every turn, or every round I should say, there is going to be some type of an effect. This gives our rogue an opportunity to disarm this trap and ultimately keep the balance of the combat in the party's favor. And for our wizard, what type of a challenge can we have for him? He already has a couple of good options. He can help the fighter with attacks at range. He can help the cleric with attacks at range. He can help the rogue disarming traps, or we could find a way to really utilize some of his backgrounds as well. Possibly there is some type of a spell that needs to be cast or read or something, some type of an arcana piece to seal the coffins and keep skeletons from coming up, or keep the trap from triggering while the rogue goes to disarm it. Again, this isn't a perfect example. This is just one that I came right off the cuff at, but looking at a basic story piece of utilizing an underground dungeon adventure in a catacomb, thinking of undead, because it worked with a good story arc, optimizing and changing our encounter based on the party members that we have at the table is going to make a big impact on how the characters address the threats that we put in front of them. If instead of those types of scenarios, we just kept the Banshee there, if the party does not have the opportunity to really turn or fight the Banshee, it's not going to be quite as rewarding. And I would actually argue that by allowing each of our party members to have some type of a big impact in an encounter session, it really allows them to develop better teamwork as a adventuring party and come to not only rely on each other, but really have things from each other that they can really talk about and build camaraderie and really give each other kind of that high five on. It allows our player characters to shine in a group setting. They can individually shine in a group setting. Now, things like that just can't be beat. So as you're going through your GM style, some of the ways that you can help this is really be upfront and utilize that forward communication, your session 0, your advertisement to gather a group of players to really talk about the type of campaign you want to run. Because if you're forward communicating, if you talk about wanting to run a campaign that's very focused on undead and exploration of ancient, that kind of gives the players an idea of what they're going to come up against. Now, it may be where 2 out of 4 are going to want to choose to play clerics or paladins or something where they know they'll have that upper hand for that divine intervention and that divine background, but still keeping in mind the player classes, races, and backgrounds that the players are choosing. Even after you announce the type of story that you're going to want to play and start crafting with them, looking at how you can utilize encounters to focus and highlight the individuality of each and every character is going to have a bigger impact on your party as a whole, on your players who are going to want to continue playing in stories where their character has those moments to shine, and for the adventuring group who are going to find a great dynamic and be able to utilize that dynamic to better have interactions in your gaming world. Now, if you've ever crafted encounters and after going through them with your players, you've had challenges, I'd love to hear about them down in the comments below. Maybe I can give you my 2 cents on them and really see if I can help find a way to make those types of opportunities for learning turn into better opportunities for future gameplay. If you've had a session where you created an encounter and everything went right and it was a fantastic success, leave that in the comments as well, because as a community, I want to learn from you, and I think we all can learn from each other. I hope this video has helped in some way as you're working on world building and crafting encounters. I really think that as we as GMs are looking at how we can elevate our games, we're going to find a better opportunity not only to continue playing games that we enjoy and love, but continue bringing people into the hobby with positive experiences, fantastic opportunities to share epic storytelling at the table, and to help us recruit more people who are going to be more apt to enjoy our games in the future. I hope you enjoyed that video. Here's a link to another video that you may enjoy. Also, make sure you hit that subscribe button to help us grow. If you'd like to support us, make sure you check out the description of the video with some links and leave a comment to let us know where will your adventures take you.